Hey Sancers, Anthony and Rose, we got a pretty cool video that we've been wanting to do for a while. We're talking about two-step turns and specifically the lies that people tell about two-step turns and the things that may be holding you back and you don't even know yet, so stick around. Guys, if you're anything like us, you were taught turns in two-step in the beginning a certain way. Now, the certain way I was taught, and they kind of held me back over a long period of time. And then finally, when I figured out what we're gonna talk about in this video, things just suddenly started to work. And that's one thing we're gonna talk about today. Now, if you're brand new to dancing, this is the way you wanna do your two-step turns. But if you've been dancing for several years, you probably didn't realize the stuff we're gonna talk about today has been holding you back. Yeah. So stick around to the end because everything will change from this point forward. Now, if you're brand new here at the channel, welcome. Now, we post all of the country dances from two-step to West Coast swing to waltz and all that, but you can notice this little button and it says subscribe. Now, if you click that button, then you become an ex-dancer and you'll know when all the awesome stuff happens here on the channel. So we'll break down the basic concept and completely change the world of two-step. All right, guys, if you're anything like us in the beginning, you were probably taught a turn that looked a lot like this. So you do your basic two-step, quick, quick, slow, slow. And you were taught to do this turn where she started facing me and ended up facing me. And unfortunately, a lot of people still teach that as the basic turn. Now, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that that is something that you can do. Yeah. It should not, however, be the basic turn. Now, let me show you a little bit more. Now, there's not a specific turn that we're talking about, but I'll show you a couple examples. If she were going backwards, she should end up turning 1.5 times and finish facing forward so she can turn 1.5 turns and face the other way. Now, I'm gonna talk a little bit about why that is. And now, for those of you who teach that, hopefully by the end of this video, you'll understand that there actually is a better way, okay? So for us, we could teach that single basic turn that we did in the beginning, because if I've got a student who's brand new and I wanna teach them how to two-step, this is certainly easier for a beginner to do because they only have to turn one time around, okay? It is easier to get them to do that. However, it hinders dancers later on, okay? There is certain things that we lead as leaders and follow as followers, and there's certain things that are built-in assumptions, okay? An assumption is she's gotta know what to do if I'm not leading her to do something. She assumes she's gonna do that thing, so she does the thing, okay? Her degree of turn as an assumption should be 1.5 times. That means if she starts facing me, when she finishes that turn, she should end up facing the opposite direction. Now, if she's facing forward, she should assume she's gonna end up facing backwards. And that's gonna open the door to doing a lot of things and it's not gonna hinder, they're not gonna get stuck in this thing where she's facing him and then she always assumes she's gonna end up facing him, okay? Now, first, we're gonna prove this to you why it should be that way, and then we're gonna talk about the benefits of why you should be dancing 1.5 as the default assumption. For example, if we did any kind of pattern where I'm not touching her, I can't lead her, right? So everything that we do, lead and follow-wise, is done through physical communication, it's not visual, right? If we did a turn where, like this, we were just in that sweetheart, and I lead her forward, if I send her out for a free spin, I'm not touching her, so I cannot lead her for a degree of turn. How much should she do? She should do 1.5. Default. Because I'm not touching her, she has to know how much to do. Right?
And we've seen a lot of people that have been taught that way, and then she'll kind of stop and be like, wait, I'm supposed to face you, and it's not correct.
Yeah, so what we want is we want everybody to focus on always doing 1.5. Does it mean you always turn 1.5? No, it doesn't. It just means we assume we're going to turn 1.5. So if we did side-by-side free spins here, right now we're both facing backwards and we both turn. If we turn, which side should we assume we're gonna finish facing, which would now be forward? Now, if we're both facing forward and I let go of her, again, I'm not leading her. How much should she turn? She should assume that's 1.5, okay? Without that 1.5 assumption, those kinds of patterns don't work, okay? She assumes she starts facing back, she finishes facing back, right? So teaching somebody in the beginning to do this, where she turns one full turn and ends up facing here, that has value, okay? No, it's just a little value because it's easier to get somebody on the floor to be able to do that. However, at some point, she's gonna get stuck doing that, okay? For example, if I wanted to lead her into something that would start her from here and then turn just like a basic promenade, if I taught her consistently to turn around and face him, that's what her assumption now is, and she assumes she's gonna do that, and she's gonna stop in the middle of that turn. Let me show you what that looks like. I'm trying to get her into promenade or whatever pattern I'm doing, and I'm trying to get her to face there, and she stops facing me, and I was like, no, you're supposed to be here, okay? there has to be a built-in assumption, which is always 1.5, from forward to back and back to forward. Then things start to work a lot better. So she has to get that as a default assumption in the beginning, or it's really, really going to mess her up later.
Right. Building bad habits.
Yeah, so you want to start them out, even if it takes a little bit longer to get the basic step, they're going to thank you for it later, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Because everything, like if I go from here, she's in this closed position, if I go into a sweetheart position, for example, she starts backwards, she turns 1.5, she finishes forward. Now from here, she ends up facing backwards. Most everything in two-step is done that way. She's facing backwards, she's facing forward, and now she's facing backwards again. Now it doesn't matter the variation. Most everything is based on that system. She's facing backwards, and now she's facing forward, and she's facing backwards. That is your default, okay? Because you have leads, and then you have assumptions. Let's talk about that a little bit further. Guys, I just want to be clear, when we say assumptions, we're not talking about rules. Rules just really don't happen.
Throw those out.
Do you always do 1.5 turns? Absolutely not. Sometimes you only do 1. Sometimes you do 3.5 or 80, or hopefully not, but like you can do any number of turns. And here's the thing, that he leads. You can do the number of turns that he leads, but in the absence of his lead, you have to have a default assumption. How much should I do if he's not telling me how much to do? So let me show you how this works. So what we showed you is this basic inside turn where she starts facing forward and she turns 1.5 and she ends up facing back. Now that is 1.5 turns. Does she have to do 1.5? No, she absolutely does not. We'll show you this from different ways. So if we're coming along, we're doing this, and I lead her for a turn, I could lead her for a turn, and then I lead her for a turn, and then I lead her for a turn, and I can lead her for any number and have her facing whichever direction. But that is because I'm physically asking her to do more. Now, I could ask her to do less, right? She doesn't have to do the full 1.5. That just means I have to break that assumption by letting her know, hey, you're not gonna finish that, and I'm gonna stop you. So, for example, if I'm leading her forward and I take her into this wrap position, that's only 1 turn, but what I've done is I've locked her down and not allowed her to finish that assumption of 1.5.
Locked me down.
Yeah, so we can do that actually from here also. So if I'm here, I could, like all of you guys have learned that basic turn with 1 turn, I'm starting that assumption and I bring the hand down and say that's enough and I can stop her. Now that's not gonna be always very balanced, but I could bring it down in the middle, or I could actually lead her to do multiple turns the same way we did before. I could lead her here, I could lead her for a turn, I could lead her for another, I could lead her for another, and finish whichever way that I want until I stop her, okay? So the default degree of turn is there, that assumption, in the absence of the times when he tells her how much to turn. And that is the reason it's there. You have to have the default. So what is the basic degree of turn? 1.5 times. So the problem with leading or teaching somebody in the beginning or learning 1 turn is that they're never really learning that assumption, and then they're starting to make judgments and decisions on what 2-step is, and then you've got to break them away from that later, which is kind of a problem. So let me show you some examples of some patterns that go from this 1.5 turn system. All right, guys, so here's the basic 1.5 turn. So she's facing backwards, she finishes forward. And now she turns 1.5 and finishes backwards. Now from that, we can create all kinds of things. So she goes from facing backwards to facing forward, that's 1.5. Now she's facing backwards, she's facing forward, free spin. All of this stuff is that same basic thing that we've already done over and over. All right, guys, obviously there's a lot more to know about turns than just 1.5 turns, but we wanted to talk today just about the structure. And I promise you this, if you get that into your mind as the default of 1.5 turns, especially for the followers.
Okay, that's key. You don't even have to teach patterns to followers. If they get this down, they'll be able to follow infinite amounts of things.
That's so true. Like I could be teaching a brand new student, they come in here to the studio,
Yes.
I could teach them the 1.5 turns to the right, 1.5 turns to the left, and then from that, once they're comfortable with that, I literally can lead them through dozens and dozens of things.
Rockstar.
She doesn't have to know, okay? But if you start with just 1 turn, now you've got to now teach these other things, and it just kind of breaks the whole system. But if you want to talk more about or learn more about the turns themselves, whether it's a pivot turn or a chaîné or a spiral, all that stuff, and actually break that stuff down, go to that link right there. That will actually talk about how we prefer to do turns and which turn you should be doing. But one more announcement, we're going to show you this stuff. We're going to show you a lot of this stuff to music, but before we do, we're going to start going back to every single week videos on Tuesday nights. We used to do a 2-stepping Tuesday.
We miss it.
We miss doing it. So we're going to start doing that every Tuesday. We're in Central Time, so it's 6:30 Central, 7:30 Eastern Time. So start checking back every Tuesday for new content. So we're going to demonstrate some of this 1.5 turn system to music, and then we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.
Hate the way that you see me. Hate the way
Why are we so far away? We're so far apart. I like that.
Welcome to the magic show.
All right, guys, so we talked, no. What we showed you, all right, guys, here's what to do next. Click that link right there. That is xdance.com. That is our personal interactive virtual dance training technology, completely different than just a regular dance video. Yep. But if you'd like to watch another video here on YouTube, that one's pretty good. You can click on that. We'll see you guys next time.
It ain't the way that you see